On and welcome to the Gumbo Pod Sports Podcast, where we talk about the hottest topics in all of sports. And on this edition, we're going to be talking about the big fight that took place, the super fight between Javonte Tank Davis and King Ryan Garcia. We're also going to be talking about the Detroit Lions players, Jameson Williams, and some of the Washington Commanders players that were suspended for violating the NFL's policy on gambling. And we're also going to be talking about CJ Stroud and his C2 test that was a little bit of a flop. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk a little bit about the big boxing match, the super fight that took place this past weekend. Ryan King Garcia taking on Javonte Tank Davis. It was a great event. It was so much excitement. It's always good when you have two of the best fighters in their weight class go at it. It's something that we don't normally see that much today, but we got an opportunity to see two guys that were worth the price of admission. And of course, we know that Javonte Davis got he got a TKO in the 7th round, a really good shot to the liver of Ryan Garcia, and he couldn't get up, man. He could not get up to he could not get to the count of 10. So you have Javonte Tank Davis continues to be undefeated. And I think he is the undisputed king of boxing. This was a great match. It was worth purchasing. I know some people like to use the little fire stick, but I think it was worth it. Every now and then, you have a fight where it just generates excitement. I can't remember the last time this happened. It probably maybe was Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, two heavyweights, two tall guys. Somebody was going to go to sleep. These two guys didn't like each other. But, in the process, it wasn't really the fight that everybody just wanted to see in the beginning. What you had Tyson Fury on his way back. He dealt with some personal issues, got his life back on track. I like Tyson Fury a lot. He's one of my favorite fighters out there right now. And Deontay Wilder, who was knocking everybody out because, he got that sledgehammer of a right hand. But, it wasn't what everybody wanted. Everybody wanted to see Deontay Wilder, but they didn't want to see him take on Tyson Fury. They wanted to see him take on Anthony Joshua. And it wasn't the big mega fight, and these guys have yet to fight. But, in the process, we got a really good fight out of that. But, when I think about it, I wonder to myself, why is it so hard for us to get the top fights? Why is it so hard for fans to get the fights that they want to see? We see this all the time in UFC when it comes to Dana White. Dana White has no problem getting the two best in the weight class in the ring together and get everybody excited about it. I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of the fighters and also it's a combination of the fans. And I feel like the fighters, they react off the fans, right? Because it used to be back in the day when I was growing up. I grew up in the 90s where heavyweights reigned supreme. During this time, you had Evander Holyfield, you had Mike Tyson, you had Lennox Lewis, you had Riddick Bowe, you had a little bit of Michael Moore, you had George Foreman making a comeback. And if you look at all of these guys, you'll see, like, these guys have lost. Like, they lost fights. They didn't come into their undefeated and they lost, right? They had 2 and 3 losses on their resume, and nobody cared because everybody understood that these guys were pretty doggone good, and it's just a matter of time before you face somebody just as good and you lose. You think about even further, some of the greatest fighters of all time, right? You think about Joe Louis. You think about Sugar Ray Robinson. You think about Sugar Ray Leonard. You think about Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, like all those fighters that we respect and enjoy watching them fight. They lost, but it didn't make us feel as if those guys were losers or the fact that we didn't want to go out here and pay for the fight. My biggest issue is we live in a society today where everybody's afraid to lose. Nobody wants to lose. Everybody worry about what it looks like, how people are going to perceive me if I was to lose. I lose my mystique. And I think that has a lot to do with these fighters. And I just think that as fans, if we have an appreciation like we did for the guys like Muhammad Ali, like the guys like Joe Frazier, and regardless to if they won or not, we still had love for them. You had guys like Joe Louis. Joe Louis, couldn't even walk the streets. And if he did, he would be bombarded by people. And it didn't matter if Joe Louis won or lost, he was still everybody's champ. And I just think that now today, everybody's just afraid of how it looks. And that is why you have these fighters that are so reluctant to get into the ring and fight one another, because they feel like their bottom line might take a hit if they were to lose. Look, if a guy can fight, he can fight. All right. And once again, they go up against guys who are just as good as them, if not better. And all it takes is just one shot, right, to knock you out. Doesn't mean that you're a loser. It doesn't mean that you can't fight. Just means that it wasn't your night. And I just think that if fans would have an appreciation for these boxers, I don't think these fights would be so hard to do. We'll finally get Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. We'll get some of these fights like Devin Haney versus Tank Davis. We'll get Ryan Garcia, him taking on Rolly Romero or something. Like, we will get these fights that everybody wants to see, and we wouldn't even have these problems. And these guys can go and they can fight one another, and they can do it for our entertainment, and they can line their pockets, and we can be excited just to know that we're getting some of the top fights. But as long as we live in this world where people talk about not taking losses and all that kind of stuff there, and I ain't taking no L's, and we want to put memes up when people lose and talk about they're losing and they can't fight this, that, and the third, knowing good and doggone well if you was to step in the ring with any one of these guys, all of you would be going to sleep. But anyway, that's the world that we live in, right? And people are so afraid about how things are going to look. But as a fighter, I don't feel like that matters. As a person that has watched fights my entire life, that does not matter. When Mike Tyson fought Lennox Lewis and Lennox Lewis beat him, that didn't have anything to do with how I felt about Mike Tyson. I didn't feel Mike Tyson was a loser. I didn't feel like Mike Tyson wasn't worth me purchasing his fight on pay-per-view. It was just the fact that Lennox Lewis is a really good heavyweight and he beat Mike Tyson. That does not mean that Mike Tyson isn't a great heavyweight. It doesn't mean that some of these guys that lose aren't good fighters. And I just think that when you look at guys like Floyd Mayweather, I think he helped boxing, but he also hurt it at the same time. He helped it because he became such a larger-than-life figure for the world of boxing when they actually needed one. But the problem is he never lost. So the fact is now it's like everybody tries to follow what Floyd Mayweather did. And now it's like nobody wants to fight anybody because everybody's afraid if they lose to that guy or get knocked out, they'll have that one loss or those two losses on their resume, and nobody will care about them anymore. But I just think that the fans need to change their minds about how they look at these fighters, and I just think that it will probably make these fighters more willing to do so. So that's what my feelings and thoughts about it. Hopefully we have more super fights going forward in the future. Hopefully what these guys' bottom line end up being makes other guys out here be more willing to go out there and fight one another because they understand that, it can be a really great moment. But I just think that as long as fighters wait till they get to the twilight of their career, people aren't going to be that receptive because boxing has an issue right now. There's a problem. There's a problem when you have, exhibition fights with YouTubers that are outdrawing guys who have done this their entire lives. And you couldn't see that in UFC today. You couldn't see that. Like you couldn't see it. It's because Dana White does a really good job getting the guys in the ring. But the fact is, boxing puts these superstars in the ring with guys that people consider tomato cans, nobody knows about, and you basically have to come up with this whole promo package to make people even care about the opponent. And I just think that it turns people off. And the more you do that, the less people are going to be interested in your product. And that open door for other guys to come in to use it as a publicity stunt. So hopefully they've learned from this situation from Ryan Garcia and Javonte Davis and give the fans what they want, which is quality fights. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk a little bit about the suspension. The suspension. of Detroit Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams, along with a few more of his compadres, his teammates, they were suspended. They were suspended for violating the NFL policy on gambling. Man, I just don't understand. I don't understand how a person can make millions upon millions of dollars, right? In a sport that gives you all this access to all these different things that you could never dreamed of, right? And you'll be able to attain these dreams and these goals that you have because the NFL does this for you. And then you go out and just do something that is just so ridiculous, like bet. You know, like now to their defense, I will say this, Jameson Williams, CJ Moore, you know, like these guys, they didn't bet on NFL games, right? But still, you still violated the policy. My question is, why do it? Why do it in the first place? Why put yourself in that position? You look at a guy like Jameson Williams. First off, when you look at the big old marquee, when you look at the headlines, what does it say? It says Jameson Williams and Detroit Lions teammates, which means that you are one of the faces of the Detroit Lions team. You were drafted last year. I'm talking Jameson Williams, right? Jameson Williams was drafted out of the University of Alabama. A lot of people considered him as the top wide receiver coming out of that draft. Better than Garrett Wilson, better than Chris Olave. Felt like he was better. They felt like he probably would have went before those guys if he didn't tear his ACL in that semifinal game, against Cincinnati. But he missed his time, comes back week 13. His first catch is a 41-yard touchdown, and he has Detroit Lions fans excited about what the future is going to hold for him. And then they have to wait 13 weeks. They have to wait 13 weeks for him to come back. Then when they finally see him, he's as advertised. But now they have to wait another 6 weeks for him because he's doing stuff like this. Jameson Williams needs to understand where he is as an athlete and what he represents, right? And if that headline didn't show him what he represents, I don't know what will. You got to make better decisions. I get it, man. You know, you got the world on the string. You can basically buy everything that you want to buy. You can actually do whatever you want to do, you know, as long as it's within the law, right? But I get all that. I completely understand. But you got to make smarter decisions, man. These type of decisions can have you out of the game. They can have you out of the game of football. Just like, you know, his teammates. Two of them were cut by the Detroit Lions. They cut them. They cut the teammates, and now these guys are looking for a job, right? You know, like you cannot be like this, man. You cannot put yourself in this type of position. Quintez Cephas and CJ Moore, they were suspended indefinitely, right? So they are no longer with the team. As soon as that happened, they got cut. All right. But you have like the Washington Commanders, you know, you got Shaka Tooney, you know what I'm saying? Like you got him out here. He got suspended, defensive end. You know, you got Stanley Berryhill, right? He's suspended for 6 games along with Jameson Williams. This is ridiculous. I don't understand, like, why would you want to put yourself in this type of position? And also, once again, have you not learned anything from guys like Calvin Ridley, who missed an entire season? He missed the entire year because of a decision that he made. And I just feel like you should learn from him. And you did it inside the facility. Seriously? You did it inside the facility. I mean, you don't think they were going to pick this up? And also, you have several members of the Detroit Lions staff that end up being dismissed as well because they were a part of it. Man, I just hope that this guy learns his lesson and he understands where he is as a person, as a player, and don't do nothing like this again. He's lucky he only got 6 weeks. He's lucky he only got 6 weeks. This could have easily been a year suspension. But I just hope that Jameson Williams learns his lesson. I hope that Quintez Cephas learned his lesson. CJ Moore learned his lesson. Unfortunately, it cost these guys their job and opportunity in the league. But man, I hope that nothing like this happened again. I hope that this is a lesson for all these other NFL players out here. And I get it, right? You know, football and gambling and legalized gambling and stuff like this, I mean, everybody's pretty much doing it. And I get it. You know, you're seeing these guys talk about the money that they made off betting, and you want to put a little money down, but don't let it cost you your career, right? Don't let it cost you the thing that you're actually using their money in order for you to be able to fund what you're trying to do when it comes to the gambling. So hopefully they make better decisions in the future. And finally, let's talk about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is going to hear his name called early in the NFL draft coming up this Thursday, which I'm extremely excited about. Make sure that you tune into the channel. We're going to be going live the entire time for the NFL draft. So make sure that you, come on and take a part in it. But anyway, CJ Stroud, one of the top quarterbacks that's going to be taken in this year's draft. It just seemed like to me over the last couple of weeks, it's been a little bit of some hit pieces going on about CJ Stroud. First, it was with Brady Quinn accusing him of not showing up to Manning Passing Academy and how the Manning family are considered football royalty and he has to be a man of his word. And now there is some tests that are questioning, CJ Stroud's intelligence, right? I mean, a S2 cognitive test that is being taken place by NFL players. It is supposed to determine their decision-making, their instincts, what they'll do in certain situations. And you had guys like Bryce Young, who's supposed to be taking the top pick in the draft. You had him scoring in the 98th percentile. You got a couple more guys that scored pretty well. You got guys like Jay Hayner scoring a 93 or a 96, 93% for Will Levis. You got Jaron Hall scoring 84. You got Clayton Tune out here scoring 84. You got 79 for Anthony Richardson, and 46% for guys like Hendon Hooker, and CJ Stroud is there with 18%. So some people are really questioning CJ Stroud's ability because based on this S2 test, anybody that has ever failed it or have a low percentage has never went on to be a great quarterback or a great player. So, and also you got scouts out here that are very, skeptical about this, right? When you're trying to evaluate guys and you're trying to make sure that you have the right fit through the draft, what you do is you do everything, right? You dot your I's, you cross your T's, you put these guys through all different type of tests because you want to make sure that you're making the right decision bringing a guy in. And you have individuals that are saying that this 18% is alarming, and they're considering maybe CJ Stroud will end up being a bust. They talk about guys of the past that played the quarterback position coming out of Ohio State, right? You had guys like Dwayne Haskins that they considered a bust. God rest his soul. You have Art Schlichter, a guy who was drafted back in 1982. Speaking of gambling, he was banned from the NFL completely for gambling on NFL games. But anyway, you have Mike Tomczak, Justin Fields. So the list goes on and on. So they're saying that, there has never really been a great Ohio State quarterback to come out of that school. And he is just for a long line of those guys. Look, all I know is sometimes guys are really good test takers and some guys aren't, right? You got some guys that are really good practice players and some guys aren't. Right, you got some guys that act like they're a beast in practice, man. They'll go out there and be catching passes. You'll think that Randy Moss was out there, the second coming. And then when they get in the game, they're nowhere to be found. Some guys just perform better at certain things, right? When the stakes are highest, that's when a guy shows up. When the stakes get a little bit too high, some guys don't show up. All I know is CJ Stroud in a game versus the University of Georgia, the team that won the national championship, this guy threw for over 300 yards and scored 4 touchdowns and lost by only 1 point in that game. The guy was absolutely incredible. And I just think that you're not going to tell me that a guy like that doesn't have a clutch gene. You're not going to tell me that a guy like that can't make really good decisions in real time. I honestly feel like CJ Stroud is going to be better than Will Levis. This guy has played better than Will Levis. I just don't understand how anybody can say that Will Levis is better than any guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud in general. Like, you look at his stats, all the turnovers that he had, but it seems like nobody really cares about that. They're showing pictures of him hitting 50-yard passes on the goalpost. I said this on Twitter. I seen Kyle Bowler throw 70 yards from his knee. I seen Jamarcus Russell do the same exact thing. But guess what? They suffered the same fate. That means absolutely nothing. Just like I feel like these tests mean absolutely nothing. You're not going to tell me that a test should stop a team from drafting a guy that is extremely good. And if you ask me, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks to come out of Ohio State in a very, very long time, right? I mean, you had some good quarterbacks. Of course, Justin Fields' career has yet to really come together. I hope that everything works out. But CJ Stroud does everything right. He's not going to wow you with his arm strength. He ain't got no bazooka arm. He's not going to shake you out your shoes like a Lamar Jackson. But what this guy does is everything right? He knows how to leave the pocket when necessary. He knows how to thread the needle when necessary. He knows how to put the ball in the hands of the playmakers. He can throw through tight windows. He can throw guys, that are wide open. He can throw to them. He checks all the boxes. So for some apparent reason, for the last couple of weeks, there's been hit pieces out on this guy. I can't understand why. I don't know if somebody just maybe putting this stuff out here so he can fall to their team. I don't know what's going on. All I know is CJ Stroud is a really good quarterback, and the guy should hear his name called very, very early. And a test is not going to stop me from drafting this guy. You mess around here and be like, oh, yeah, his S2 cognitive test, he scored 18%, and go ahead and watch him light up your team for the next 10, 15 years. CJ Stroud is a guy that definitely should be drafted early. He's a guy that even should be considered being drafted first because of his talent and his skill set. And not one test out there should be able to determine it. I don't care what the analytics say. I don't care what happens. You cannot measure heart through a test. You cannot measure athletic ability through a test. Well, you can, but when it comes down to it, right, it's rather you got the clutch gene or you don't, right? And this dude definitely has it, and I've seen it on countless occasions, so wouldn't stop me at all. But I want to say thank you all for checking out the Gumbo Pod Sports Podcast. Really do appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, youtube.com, search Gumbo Pod Sports Podcast. Also, you can check out the Gumbo Pod Sports Podcast on Twitter at Gumbo Sports Talk, and also previous episodes available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Anchor FM. Till next time, I'll see you down the road.